Hi there, this is an update about the second week in Singapore, the busy and hectic city where there is always something going on. I came in touch with Laura, who is running a few sustainable businesses in the city, and she invited me to come to her urban farm where I worked for a few hours and spoke with her husband.
So we are in very much in the heart of Singapore. We are in a place called Yio Chu Kang, which is about 20 minutes from city, at a community garden. So we run a community garden, about 20-25 neighbors, and we grow different types of local vegetable. For example, this is called the Malabar spinach, which grows very well in this climate. We also have okra, eggplant, lots of different herbs, and every Saturday we come and do lots of gardening and activities over here. So one of the things that I realized after I started gardening is how little I knew about where my vegetables and where my fruits come from. So for example, I didn't even know what an okra plant looked like or what an eggplant plant looked like. So I think doing this gardening and growing a lot of vegetables has just helped me create a whole new appreciation for the food that we eat. And it's also helped me realize how hard it is to grow food and how much pesticides and how much chemicals sometimes we have to put just to just to be able to get good produce. But this garden is organic, so we don't use any sort of pesticides or any sort of bad chemicals, but it just helped us get a lot of realization of where food comes from. So that's one of our objectives, to help the people in our community to also get a newfound appreciation for food. And hopefully that can encourage people to maybe waste less food or share the food, and I think more than anything else, just to have fun as a community.
Okay. I just went to have some lunch back at the office. It's Saturday, there's nobody's here, but I'm now going to another event. I've been invited for the BMW iPerformance launch at the other side of the city, and I'm now being picked up by my friend Cheng. Probably an electric car, I hope so, or at least something with an electric motor. How are you?
Okay, I'm good.
Yeah?
Have you had your lunch?
Yeah, I just had lunch.
Oh, great.
Which car is this?
This is the 225XE Active Tourer.
Alright.
So this is a plug-in hybrid. So like what I said, I definitely bring you something with an electric motor inside.
Yeah. You know how to treat me.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. So we're going.
We're going to the showroom. There's a iPerformance launch today. iPerformance is one of BMW's latest range of vehicles. They are plug-in hybrid electric vehicles.
At the showroom they had a nice range of hybrid vehicles and some activities going on, like racing with bike-powered mini cars on. I don't know. It's nicer to watch this lady tell it herself.
So basically, the race cars are all powered by electric, so you have to cycle, and then it will move.
And I'm gonna battle Cheng.
He's gonna
Yeah.
our battle player here.
Awesome.
You're going down.
Hands.
Yeah, I'm going down.
You're going down.
Okay, let's see. Well, I definitely was not the one who went down. So I'm with Derek from BMW, and we're now going to test drive the i8, which is BMW's hybrid car. And I saw it a lot of times before, but never drove it. I'm not going to drive it now, I'm going to sit next to Derek. But that's really, really nice, huh? And you're going to show me the acceleration and how fast it is, and the top speed also, huh?
The top speed, I'll try my best.
Okay, great. Let's go.
So, just show you some stuff in this car. By default, we are in comfort mode. So, 0 to about 70 will be electric motor.
0 to 70?
Yeah.
Okay.
Above 70, petrol engine kicks in. But within 0 to 70, if I press the throttle a bit harder, the petrol engine will kick in. And there's also e-drive mode, which is full electric. So right now the battery is a bit flat, so we got about 2 km of full electric. And there's also sport mode. So shifting to drive, bump it to the left, you hear the engine, right? And then the meter here turns red.
Alright.
Okay, so I'll just go.
Alright, so we're gonna test the acceleration.
Yeah, we can.
Oh, that's nice.
It handles pretty well also.
Yeah.
That's the fun bit.
That's nice, man. Well, it's not a fully electric car. I have to admit, like the power that it has and the feeling that you get in your stomach when you pull up, it's really good.
Yeah.
I'm here with Andy from BMW in the supermarket, and we're not here without reason. We're not going shopping, but we just had tonight interesting discussion about balance of electric cars and cars in general. So Andy, yeah, what's the kind of the point of the discussion is that batteries in electric cars always need to be exactly in the middle, right?
Balanced. Yeah.
Balanced,
As close
yeah.
to the middle as possible.
Yeah. So now we're gonna do a quick test to see why that is so important.
Alright, Viva, over
Alright.
to you.
Step one. So explain me what is the test? What are we doing now?
Now you're controlling the steering from the handlebar.
Yeah.
This is where you drive your wheels, and this is where the weight is as far from your steering wheels as possible. Your job now, Viva, is to try and steer this trolley as easily as possible. Over to you. So don't just steer the rear wheels, try and turn the front of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, try and twist it, turn it, yeah.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
And go quicker.
You need to push a lot.
Turn it back that way.
Alright. Yeah, I get what you mean. It's difficult to steer because this side tends to go quicker than front,
Yeah.
and it's very difficult to.
Alright, now let's move all of this weight back to this way and let's see how it changes. How do you feel?
It's more easy than in the front.
It's a lot easier, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what you want from a car. It's
Uh-huh.
easy to steer, easy to control.
Yeah.
It's more agile. That's because the weight is concentrated closer to the center of gravity and center of the vehicle, in
Right.
between the four wheels, and that's why you
Yeah.
want an electric car that's built from scratch
Yeah.
and not something that's converted.
Right. Apparently, I had many followers in Singapore who all wanted to help me out. So during my stay, I had a lot of nice dinners, including this one from Marcel, who introduced me to a local delicatessen. All right, Marcel, can you explain what we're eating now?
This is tulang. This is something you can only find here in Singapore. It's an Indian dish, and yeah, it's very nice.
It's very nice.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Not too
Sure.
spicy, but very
Yeah.
nice. It's mutton, it's like sheep or lamb meat.
Shafiq from Singapore Electric Vehicles took me for a tour through the city. One of the highlights was the Gardens by the Bay. This is a 250 hectare nature park in central Singapore. It contains more than 1 million plants and also has two called conservatories, the Cloud Forest and the Flower Dome, which is the world's largest columnless glasshouse. I met with Manish, the CEO of Singapore Electric Vehicles. He was so generous to offer me a guest room in his office during the time that I'm in the city. I already found out that Singapore is not so keen on electric cars, so I wanted to know who was so crazy to start a fully electric taxi company and what struggles they encountered. Yeah, Manish, we're driving now in an electric car throughout Singapore, in a taxi car. Is this the first electric taxi fleet in Singapore?
Yes, Weber. Hi, and great to have you with us, Weber. In fact, my company is privileged that you are around here after you are on your very exciting journey going around the world. And to answer your question, yes, this is the first commercial electric vehicle fleet in Singapore. We started this journey about 2 years back, and now we have 15 electric vehicles running with Uber.
Okay.
And they're doing quite well. Very good demand, very good feedback from the customers.
Okay. So obviously I've been here for weeks and I heard about the challenges the country faces when introducing electric vehicles here. So who was the one and why did you have the idea like, hey, we're going to start an all-electric taxi fleet in Singapore?
Yeah, this idea came from our chairman, Dr. M.
Right.
He's very passionate about doing new ventures which are steeped in cutting-edge technology.
Yeah.
And he also has an eye for conscious capitalism. So he's a billionaire.
Okay.
But he wants to do business where there is goodness as well as profitability.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So he thought of this idea, and we researched it for about 2 years. Went to all parts of the world where this electric vehicle technology existed, and then we tied up with a vendor, and here we are. We had challenges, Weaver, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
The fossil fuel vehicles have been around for more than 100 years, and the lobby is very strong, and they have billions and trillions of dollars invested. But things are changing, the government policies are changing. We got very good support from Singapore government, the LTA, MOT, all authorities.
Back from the beginning?
Initially it was difficult, but then very quickly, things moved very quickly in Singapore.
Next electric car pioneer was Joe, who also lives in the city and encountered serious problems to import his favorite car. Yeah, you are the first EV owner in Singapore.
The first Tesla owner.
All right.
I mean, they had the test bed here on some BYDs, and so the Mitsubishi EVs were here on a test bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was your first car you drove? The first electric?
The first electric was actually a Tesla Roadster, which one of the 2.5 version, the last generation that they made.
Yeah.
And I stumbled onto Tesla where they were selling the demo units, and I brought one in from Australia to Singapore.
Ah, from Australia. All right. And did you have any problems at that time to import the
No,
Roadster?
it was the program at that time was quite straightforward in terms of, okay, if it's electric, you get a certain rebate and done, and it was a few weeks and it was through.
Okay, and then you were so enthusiastic that you decided to get the Model S.
Yeah, I got the Model S in a similar way. I bought it secondhand in Hong Kong and brought it in, thinking, all right, a year or so ago I had this, and I'll do it again. And as it turned out, it took 7 months.
7 months, amazing. Yeah, so what was the big issue?
The policies had changed. I think initially they just had a very basic program on electric vehicles, and then they still have a test bed, so they didn't really have full working consumer electric vehicles that people just buy. So when it was brought in, they just didn't know what to do with it. They didn't know how to tax it. They didn't, they didn't know what charging infrastructure I'm allowed to use and what I'm not allowed to use. They just never seen it. The Land Transport Authority has just never seen it. And then one of the things is when it came up for testing, and they wanted to test for emissions. Obviously, everybody knows there's no emissions on an electric vehicle, but they wanted to test it. So they just brought it to the testing center, and it just sat there for 3 weeks because they just didn't know what to do. And they were trying to follow the UNECE standards on testing, but the UNECE standards on testing is about testing the range and the power consumption, not about emissions. And so there was some confusion. Eventually they tested it, and it came out not as good as it should. And I've always stipulated that was because the equipment was old, and the way they did it wasn't, because they don't do it very often.
Okay.
Was not the right process.
So they said that it had emissions, the car.
So I was charged with emissions on an electric car.
So how did they come up with that? How did
they based on the electric consumption of me plugging it in and charging it, they assigned a CO2 factor to it. So then they charged me a factor based on my consumption of electricity off of the grid.
Okay. So
and then converted that to CO2, and then charged me a certain levy. Since I brought this up and everything, there are about 5 Teslas now, so 4 others including mine. And the next few ones came in, actually got the rebates.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I never got my money back. I don't think the land transport will ever want to admit that they're wrong, so they just sort of not talk about it.
Yeah, so let's go back, because they said, yeah, we need to charge you, and you fought that, or what did
I
you
wrote
do?
in. I was obviously not happy about it. I said no, this is wrong, and it took some writing back and forth until they just said no, and it's been 7 months by then. So I've just said, fine, I'll pay the $15,000 fine. And the interesting is it's this car. I think remains the only electric vehicle in the world that's been charged emissions by any government. So it should be in the Guinness Book of World Records.
Right. Okay, and then it got viral, and then
by the end of the week, Elon Musk calls the Prime Minister because the Prime Minister had visited Tesla about 3 weeks before then on a trip to Silicon Valley to meet executives, and he had a ride in the Model X with Elon. And then when Elon calls after reading all the stuff, he picks up the phone, and Elon's like, my car's not that inefficient because the testing was inaccurate. And so the Prime Minister promised him that he would look into it and investigate. And it's nothing came out of the investigations other than that, at least from my part, right? It was.
They changed things. Okay.
Where they changed, made it easier for other electric cars to come in.
So you've been to electric car pioneer.
The bleeding edge, as they say.
That was it for this week. In the next episode I will be trying durian, which is a fruit but known as the blue cheese of Asia. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the channel and be the first to get the next video in your inbox.